All right, so you want to get into houseplants, right? I bet I know the first one everyone told you to get. You know the one. It's supposed to be impossible to kill. The one plant that everyone, and I mean everyone, from the person at the garden store to your favorite plant influencer, swears is completely foolproof. Yeah, we're talking about the snake plant. But what if that promise, that whole you can't kill it thing, is the very reason so many of them end up, well, dead?
You hear it everywhere, don't you? First they tell you it's low maintenance. Like, you can just forget it exists and it'll be totally fine.
Then they dial it up a notch. It's not just easy, it's hard to kill. This thing's not just a plant, it's practically a fortress, a survivor.
And then, the final promise, the one that seals the deal. It's perfect for beginners. It just sounds like there's no way you could mess this up. It's the ideal starter plant.
Which brings us right to the big, frustrating question. If this plant is so easy, so tough, so perfect, then why is yours slowly turning to mush? So let's dive into a story that probably sounds a little too familiar. It's a pattern that plays out all the time, in homes all over the place. We're going to call it the unkillable plant problem.
You know, it never happens all at once. It's more like a slow-motion collapse. Day one, you bring it home, you're full of hope. A few weeks go by and you start noticing little things. The leaves aren't as stiff as they used to be. Maybe the color is a bit off. And then you see it, the first yellow leaf. And before you know it, what seemed like a tiny problem just snowballs into a total collapse. The whole plant just kind of gives up on you.
And here's the part that's so confusing, right? It's not like you were ignoring it. In fact, it's the opposite. You were trying to take care of it. You were checking on it. You were giving it water. So the really crucial thing to get here is this whole disaster happened despite your good intentions, not because you didn't have any.
And that brings us to the real heart of the matter. This plant isn't dying because you're a bad plant parent. It's dying because of a fundamental misunderstanding of what it actually is and what it truly needs to thrive.
Okay, so check this out. This is where we go wrong. Our idea of easy care is basically just treating it like a normal plant, but less. We put it on a watering schedule, maybe we check on it now and then. But the plant's reality, it's on a whole other planet. This is an organism that was literally designed for scarcity, for super dry places. It has its own built-in water tanks and those thick leaves. So it's not a low-effort version of a typical plant. It's running on a completely different operating system. And this is the key takeaway right here. The snake plant does not reward effort. It rewards understanding. Trying harder, watering it more, checking on it constantly, none of that is going to help. Success only comes when you have that aha moment and finally get what makes it tick.
So if it's not neglect that's killing it, what's the real culprit? Well, in almost every single case, it's something you can't even see until it's way too late. It's a hidden killer working underground called root rot. Now let's get really clear on what root rot actually is. We always hear, oh, you gave it too much water, but it's a little more specific than that. It's really about a lack of oxygen. See, when the soil stays wet all the time, those little air pockets that roots need to breathe just disappear. The roots literally suffocate. They get weak, and then they start to decay. Think of it like a chain reaction. First, the soil stays wet for way too long. That squeezes out all the air pockets. With no oxygen, the roots start to suffocate and get super weak. And once they're weak, they're a perfect target, and the rot just takes over. And all of this is happening where you can't see it, right under the surface.
And here is the fatal trap. When the roots are rotting, they can't do their job of absorbing water. So what happens? The leaves start to look weak and soft, and they turn yellow, which looks exactly like a thirsty plant. So your brain immediately thinks, oh no, it needs more water. And boom, you're caught in this vicious, deadly cycle. You see a weak-looking plant, so you add more water, thinking you're helping. But that just makes the root rot worse, which of course makes the plant look even weaker. The very thing you're doing to try and fix the problem is actually what's killing it faster. Okay, so how in the world do you break this cycle? Well, the solution is going to feel completely wrong. It goes against every single one of our instincts about how to care for something that looks like it's struggling. The answer is just one word: less. Not more attention, not a better schedule, just less. Less getting involved, less doing stuff, and yep, you guessed it, way less water. So here's the new rule book. It's super simple. First, forget any schedule you had. Your only job now is to wait until that soil is completely dry. And I don't just mean the top layer. I mean stick your finger all the way down in there, and if you feel any moisture, you wait.
Second, when it is finally bone dry, give it a really thorough watering. Soak it until you see water flowing out the drainage holes. And third, stop. That's it. You're done. Don't even think about touching that watering can again until the soil is completely dry.
And let's be real, watering the plant, that's the easy part. The hardest part of this whole thing is psychological. It's fighting that little voice in your head that's screaming, "Do something, help it." No, the waiting, that's the real test.
It all boils down to just shifting your mindset. You have to stop asking the old question, when should I water it again? That question just leads to guesswork and bad schedules. Instead, you ask a new, much simpler question. Is the soil completely dry? If the answer is no, then the decision is already made for you. You do nothing.
And really, that just says it all. For a plant that evolved to survive on almost nothing, the best thing you can possibly do for it is to show a little restraint. It's about giving it the space it needs to just be the tough, self-sufficient plant it was born to be.
So the next time you look at your snake plant and you think it's looking a little sad, don't just grab the watering can. Just pause for a second and ask yourself this. What if the greatest act of care you can give this plant is having the wisdom to know when to do absolutely nothing at all?